Hello and welcome to a Gen 9 bonus video. I'm Gabe and today we'll be giving some evolutions to the past Paradox forms from Pokemon Scarlet. So, here is a quick spoiler warning. If you somehow have avoided the late game Paradox forms up until now and don't want them spoiled, now is your chance to boogie out of here. Alright, so, in particular, we'll be looking at Screamtail, Sandy Shocks, and Fluttermane for the evolutions. I finally feel ready to take on this challenge as I just completed the dex, though I am playing Pokemon Violet, and as far as Paradox forms go, the future forms are in no way as cool as the past forms. I mean, each generation, I prefer to get the game that I feel like will sell less. And after that first trailer, I thought that people would be flocking to Scarlet, so I pre-ordered Violet then. I mean, I'm having a blast with Violet, but after seeing all the Paradox forms from the past, I really wish I had chosen differently. Alright, Screamtail time. And of course, since this is a past form of Jigglypuff, we actually get to start with our own version of Igglybuff. Now, I know that I am not alone when I say that the Gen 2 baby Pokemon that were introduced are pretty lackluster. I mean, like, Pichu is pretty darn adorable, but most of the rest of them are just kind of there, and that includes Igglybuff. I mean, I guess it is cute, but that is just about it. So, we're gonna give it a bit more of a personality. It's just a little baby, right? But, you know, sometimes babies are horrible little nightmare machine monsters. So, that's where we're going. I have been justifying past Jigglypuff's name. You know, it has Scream in its title because it hasn't mastered its iconic singing, so you get a scream instead of the singing. So our little baby is going to be screaming. Babies like to scream. That's their thing. So our past Igglybuff is going to be a terrifying, angry little baby who is always throwing a fit. The eyes can stay the same, but with a little furrowed brow, you know, sharp little baby tooth in the mouth, and cute little eyelash markings that, you know, Screamtail has, but here they're going to start out as like red eyes, kind of teardrop shaped. Oh, and lastly, to show that it will get that super long coiffed hair, it'll get messy baby hair with flyaways. Alright, let's take a look at Tantrum Tail, the balloon Pokemon. This tiny baby Pokemon is never in a good mood. Researchers have tried everything to appease Tantrum Tail, but it is in a perpetual state of rage. Its high-pitched screams can shatter glass. Only the bravest of trainers dare train this tiny nightmare. And its ability is Cute Charm, because it's still cute, and that means that it can sometimes infatuate an attacker. Oh, the other thing I'll say, we're going to be tweaking the stats of like Screamtail and the others. Obviously, in the games, like, they're kind of post-game content, so they have really, really good stats. In this, you know, we're going to justify it by saying those Pokemon in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are, like, I don't know, temporally boosted by time travel or whatever. That's why their stats are so good. Here, their stats will be comparable to their, like, modern-day equivalent. So, Igglybuff and Tantrum Tail have the same base stat total. Now, I really like Screamtail a lot, so having to deal with Tantrum Tail is, you know, the price you have to pay to get it. I love how much I dislike this baby Pokemon. Like, it's a prime example of a puntable design. I would definitely, you know, just kick this thing across the field. But anyway, it evolves into Screamtail, and then it evolves again. So, let's work on our past Wigglytuff. There are some theories about why the current Paradox Pokemon are unable to evolve, but I'm going to go with the explanation that, you know, them being pulled out of time leaves them partially temporally locked or something, so, you know, they can't have any major changes like an evolution. Whatever, it's fine. But since for us, the Pokemon would be restored in the Palean region, you know, restored from fossils, so there's no time travel-y shenanigans going on, and we can bypass that evolution-stopping headcanon reasoning of mine. So give little Screamtail a Moonstone, and we get this. A Wigglytuff who is just a freaking rock star. He's so cool. We're bringing all of that hair forward, and even swooping Wigglytuff's ears forward as well. The little fangs that it had before now get to be a big set of intimidating chompers. And along with that cute pose and that little smirk, this design gets, a really fun personality. I mean, it's adorable as heck, but it's also ready to rock out. It's like a screamo, emo rock star. And also we gave it a tail because visually I needed to offset the hair a little bit. And lastly, I decided to have some fun with the shiny. Okay, this is Wailing Tail, the rock star Pokemon. This sassy Pokemon has finally mastered its piercing scream and can successfully hypnotize others. Wailing Tail are very arrogant and don't like to be challenged. If anyone touches their hair, they lose control and attack with no restraint. Trainers are urged to stay on this Pokemon's good side or risk being lulled into a sleep and abandoned. And its ability is competitive. Makes sense. And so that means that its special attack raises a whole bunch if it's ever hit with a stat-lowering move. Alright, you'll have to let me know what you think of this full Paradox line. I've always loved Wigglytuff because, it's fairly bunny-like and I love bunnies, but you'll have to let me know, again, down in the comments, if you'd plop these round mons on your team. Okay, next is Sandy Shocks. Let us see what past Magnemite will be. Now, Sandy Shocks isn't quite my favorite Paradox form, but I really appreciate how inventive the design is. It's a Magneton, but it's also part Unga Bunga caveman and a dinosaur silhouette. Very cool. But with just a single little Magnemite, we've got a pretty straightforward design here. It's just one of those, little guys that are already present in Sandy Shocks. Now, I've finally started coming around on the Magnemite line way back in Gen 1 when I was just a wee little youth. I remember seeing Magnemite for the first time and being like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And I am certain that it is what gave me kind of a general dislike for Objectmon. Now I've softened over time, and now I'm pretty excited to work on these evolutions. Anyway, honestly, there's not a whole lot to say about the design process here, so let's take a look at Earthy Shocks, the Magnet Pokemon. This ancient form of Magnemite has not mastered its powers of electromagnetism and lacks the ability to float in the air. Instead, Earthy Shocks constantly grounds itself to the earth. Researchers suspect this primal form originated from space. And its ability is Magnet Pool, and that prevents Steel-type Pokemon from escaping. Yeah, it's real darn cute. I would love to see these little nerds, scuttling around. But now, let's take a look at what Sandy Shocks will evolve into. I know that I just said that I've warmed up to Objectmon in general, but, I still kind of hate Magnezone. I mean, I can appreciate that the Gen 1 design trope of more of the same thing added on didn't continue, but Magnezone just never really gelled with me. Okay, so going back to Theoryland, I know that others have guessed that, like some other Pokemon, Magnemite comes from space. And I can get behind that. And I can imagine that, it evolves to become more intimidating, finally landing on this science fiction-y Magnezone. But in the past, we're going to say that it's trying to look intimidating by copying the dinosaur body plans of some of the other larger Pokemon around it. That'll be why Sandy Shocks is roughly shaped like a theropod dinosaur. So now, when it evolves again, it will need to go bigger, and it's gonna take on the appearance of a massive sauropod. And I really like how Sandy Shocks, it still looks a bit awkward. I wanted to maintain that strangeness here. So, the false head, the fact that the legs are a little long, and the eye is actually being placed in the center of the chest, all maintain that awkwardness. Oh, and also, since it's from space, I wanted the long legs to give it kind of the appearance of the War of the Worlds tripod vibes. I know it has 4 legs, but tripod, you know what I mean. Alright, let's take a look at Earthy Shocks, the Magnet Beast Pokemon. This ancient form of Magnezone has rearranged the components of its body to blend in with the larger and more intimidating Pokemon around it. Earthy Shocks doesn't realize how poor its disguise is and tries to hide amongst completely different Pokemon. And its ability remains magnetful, because, magnets. But yeah, it's big, it's silly, but I kind of like it. Let me know what you think, whether or not it's the right balance of bizarre and intimidating. Okay, we've got one final design to knock out, Fluttermane. Now, I guess Fluttermane is in some way supposed to be related to extinct flying reptiles, which I think is hinted at with the scale pattern that's going on. So I started out trying to pull in some more pterosaur influences. This proved difficult. I initially thought I could get the wings kind of pulled around its head to create the brim of the hat, with the claw fingers grasped together right in front of the face, but this ended up being a bit too busy. The top of the head too, I figured I could treat it as a pterosaur crest, but getting the spikes to work was very difficult. I ended up falling back on the familiar hat as I was tweaking enough of the rest of the silhouette that I wanted the head to remain very recognizable. I also took the little dangly dress tendrils that Mismagius has and pulled those up into full arms, complete with a couple clawed digits. But between the exact hat shape and the arm position, this just took me forever to finalize. Just the shapes, getting them right. So, like Fluttermane, I think this is recognizable as the Pokemon, while still straying away from the silhouette an appropriate amount. The colors were all pretty fun to deal with, and we also ended up with a nice, loud shiny. I've been mostly pulling in influences from the other Paradox forms, but Fluttermane's shiny colors led to a particularly festive look. Alright, let's learn more about this ancient witch. This is Wicked Mane, the Cackle Pokemon. Somehow, this ancient form of Mismagius shares some strange connection to other extinct flying reptile Pokemon, though the exact lineage remains a mystery. Its scales flutter like feathers as it effortlessly floats about. Researchers suspect this Pokemon was one of the first to master fairy-type magic. And its ability is something new that I'm calling Old Magic, and that means that this Pokemon's moves will deal more damage as long as it moves last. Somehow, just the addition of the arms, I think, makes it more dangerous looking. But what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of these new Paradox evolutions. Which is your favorite? What do you think of the naming convention? And is there any other Paradox form that you wanted to see get an evolution? With that, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching this fun little bonus episode. Leave a like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And I'll see you in episode 27 of Pokemon Amber, where we'll be meeting the Splice Starter Final Evolutions and get our very first Legendary. Alright, see you then. Bye.